This is Work From Home, the podcast that helps you stay connected, productive and sane while working from home. I'm Harry.
And I'm Alex.
And today, you are not alone. You are surrounded by fellow remote workers trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And today, Alex, you found a piece of research.
Yes, quite an interesting piece of research, actually, from Slack.
Okay.
And they've conducted basically their first ever large-scale look into what they call the Remote Employee Experience Index. Basically, they're trying to quantify a way of figuring out how happy or satisfied people are with remote work in different aspects of remote work.
All right, awesome. And just for anyone out there living under a rock that hasn't been communicating via Slack, although I guess there are alternatives. Slack is, how do you describe it? It's an instant messaging tool. It's a team communication tool to avoid you sending a million emails back and forth. So I think they're really steeped in the whole remote work place, and I feel like I guess they know a thing or two about this way of working.
It's MSN Messenger for work.
Yeah, exactly. What have they found? I mean, they have named it the most boring thing I can imagine.
Yeah, it's an industry-focused piece of research, but as well as the research, we found an article that highlighted 5 interesting points from it. So the first one is that people are not missing the 9-to-5 routine of working in an office. And they say those with flexible hours are almost twice as productive as those who work 9-to-5. And they also feel a significantly greater sense of belonging. Interesting.
Cool. How are they finding that out? Is this just anecdotal? Is this just people saying this, or is there kind of a way to measure it?
They talked to around 5,000 remote workers globally. So this has been one of the things they asked them about. And in addition to that, globally, 72% of people want to keep a hybrid or transition to a hybrid form of working, which is really high.
Feels kind of inevitable at this point, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting as well. The UK is at 72%, but whereas places like Japan are down at 65%. I think they have much more of like an ingrained office culture there.
Even now?
Yeah, and Germany's up at 77%. And in terms of people who want to keep it home working only, the US leads 16% of people who never want to go back to the office, that's almost 1 in 5. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's pretty strong. I don't see it. I can't see a world where that is happening. Certainly not on any kind of large scale. I'm sure there are obviously going to be companies like ours who are remote cultures, but I can't see that being 1/5 of companies. But maybe it will be 1/5 of companies. I mean, that's pretty.
Like, what if you wanted to make sure that you stayed office only? Then you need to move to France, where 14% of people want to keep it office only, which is the highest percentage of the countries surveyed.
Interesting. I wonder that's really, really interesting how the cultural differences just kind of affect people's views on these things. Because you'd think they'd been put off by the COVID. I think a lot of people are probably feeling this way just because it makes them feel safer, as well as the fact that I don't know. It'd be interesting to kind of do this exact same survey in like 2 years' time, when hopefully we'll find ourselves in a world where COVID is under control. And so we're just doing what we want, not what we have to do. It'd be really interesting to see kind of what people's views are at that point.
Well, you're in luck, Harry, because this is a survey that will now be conducted annually, according to Slack. So this will be an ongoing measurement. So this is the first one, which is why there's all this noise about it, but it should be an ongoing thing. The second point from this is that, and I think this is interesting, it says regular meetings are not the key to keeping employees aligned.
Okay. So you mean we've got to scratch our daily stand-ups that we've just started? Is that what you said?
Well, this is as it pertains to like belonging and culture and things like that. It says workers who attend weekly status meetings actually feel worse about their sense of belonging. Huh. And it says that the alternative and the things that have really worked well for people are bi-weekly celebrations. And if you go back to, we had an episode fairly recently with Dr. Michelle Dickinson, and she talked about in her company, they make a point of celebrating failure, not just celebrating successes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that discussion.
And a third interesting point from this is that children obviously have an effect on working remotely. You'll know more about that than I do.
Do they? Oh.
But it's interesting that the effect of children it's distributed unequally. there's a breakdown here, which is it's about the remote employee experience, but they break it down by gender and like the individual people within a household. So globally, people have been, feeling a certain amount of like positivity about their work-life balance or their sense of belonging or their productivity. But relatively to that, people with kids have generally been feeling a little bit worse about things. And in fact, specifically women with kids have been feeling even worse still. So it's obvious that remote work, it isn't affecting everyone equally.
Yeah, I can certainly say, like, yeah, it's interesting from my wife's experience. She's definitely feeling that, like the challenges of having kids and working at the same time as, or a kid, I should say, has been really tough for her specifically. So it's interesting that it's affecting different kind of demographics differently.
The one exception is belonging, which I think is quite interesting, which might stem from the idea that maybe if a company's more allowing you to work flexibly or at home and take care of your kids, you probably feel more at home within the company as well.
Yeah, that one I found interesting. So I'm looking at this graph as well. I'm trying to sort of interpret it as we talk. But yeah, I think that is really interesting that actually it's the people with kids that feel more, that they have the sense of belonging much more. And that's, I wonder why that is. I'd love to understand more about that.
The fourth interesting point here is that telecommuting, we just talked about kids and how there's inequality there. But interestingly, it says telecommuting is more of a leveler than you might expect. And people from Black, Asian, and Hispanic backgrounds actually have a higher rate of telecommuting or working remotely than their equivalent white colleagues, which I think is really interesting. And it confirms this idea that in some ways remote work is a leveler as well as highlighting inequality in other places.
Yeah, that's it. It's funny, isn't it? Like, because my initial response to all of this stuff was not to this article, but just remote work generally, was that it would be a leveler because everyone, if you live miles and miles away, it doesn't matter anymore. You don't have to spend 2 hours commuting. You can just be at work, at home, and all that kind of stuff. But some of the people we've spoken to over the, all the episodes that we've done have kind of highlighted the fact that it actually is it's going to exaggerate inequality in terms of, people's access to the stuff they need to apply for and, actually be able to do those jobs because of, wherever, their home, whatever their home setup might be or their financial position or whatever. So that's kind of, that's really interesting. We will, of course, link up this study in the show notes if you want to learn more about it. But if you have thoughts of your own about it, please let us know. wfh@lowerstreet.co is our email. We love to hear from you. We'd love to speak to you on the show. If you are senior management, middle management, or anyone within a company and you kind of have opinions on this stuff, we would love to chat to you about that. If you enjoyed today's episode and you think someone else within your team would enjoy kind of learning about this survey that Slack have put out, then please do share it with them. Thanks very much for listening. As ever, we will be back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with more working from home goodies, and we'll talk to you soon.